It's interesting. One of the things that I've been noticing about the United States is as far as our food and our agriculture. We know how damaging a lot of the food and agriculture here is in the United States. We also know that the pharmaceutical companies are really kind of steering hold of everything. And what I mean by that is every time we turn around, and there's something new that we didn't know as far as finding out what does or doesn't cause certain health issues and cancers and things of that nature. It's really kind of crazy realizing that with, like, for instance, like the FDA, every time we turn around, there is yet another head of the FDA that was the CEO of one of the food conglomerate companies of which they were supposedly investigating and were supposedly trying to keep them on the straight and narrow, supposedly. And you have to realize that, number one, the FDA is one of the most corrupted organizations on the planet. And we've gotten to a point now where, back in the 1980s, 1986 to be precise, that there was an actual bill that was signed in office by, at the time, sitting President Ronald Reagan. And what it was dealing with the pharmaceutical companies and how if you had any issues with any pharmaceutical, you had no legal recourse. In other words, you could not sue them. So now we are actually dealing with where the FDA is saying that you can't sue agricultural business, or big agriculture, I should say. We're not talking like local farmers. We're talking like the agricultural business and everything as far as a corporate conglomerate, that you can't sue them if you end up with any kind of cancer or cancer-related illnesses. Now, this is very maddening because, number one, we have tons of people out there, obviously here in the United States, are having cancer and cancer-related illnesses. And a lot of it's from a lot of misinformation about nutrition and health, first and foremost. But the other thing is to restrict people and to have them not be able to hold accountable for the people that are actually providing these issues to begin with. It becomes a giant circle of things whenever it comes to your pharmaceutical industries, being the FDA is one of the most corrupted organizations on the planet. And it's really disturbing that we don't have that legal recourse. It is actually stripping away the rights of the citizens to be able to say, we're going to hold these companies accountable. I've already discussed more than a few times, and especially if you've ever listened to me before on my podcast or checked out my YouTube channel, how BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are financial institutions that literally own everything. And this goes back to them stripping away, little by little, any kind of rights that ordinary people, that everyday people might otherwise have. This is really deeply problematic for a multitude of reasons, one of which is people are still at times very married to their political party of, their choice, so to speak, or their politician of choice. I mean, think about how many people have actually backed Trump, thinking he's doing the best thing he can for the American diet and all sorts of other issues in the pharmaceutical whatever. And I said, no. You have to see the bigger picture. You have to see who it is that they place in certain key positions to understand that they do not have your best interest at heart. And where a lot of changes are going to be made is going to be from the ground level. And what I mean by that is, it is up to us as citizens of a certain country to truly educate ourselves and truly start asking serious questions about how we want to live our lives. I mean, think about it. The United States is leading the entire world in diabetes, obesity, anxiety, depression, just whatever kind of ailment you think could be attributed to poor nutrition or poor resources or whatever it is. And we're looking at the fact that the agricultural business has become deeply corporatized. So how do we combat this? Well, first and foremost, if you can find local farmers that are, doing things in the best and most healthiest way you could possibly muster, do business with them. Find them and say, look, I'll pay you X number of dollars for this right here that you provide. I used to love, and I still do love going to farmers markets because a lot of times you'll see things you otherwise wouldn't see in your corporate conglomerate grocery stores. And many times over, we're already seeing a lot of the results of people buying stuff from grocery stores because they don't have that outlet, and it's very disheartening to say the least. I mean, aside from the obvious, which is, let's face it, grow your own food and learn how to cook and prepare things in the manner that you would prefer it. Therefore, you're taking control of your health and the resources and everything else. And the other thing is realizing that pharmaceuticals are some of the contributing factors. I mean, it's not just one little thing, but nonetheless contributing factors towards the decline of the health and the stability within the U.S. And it's a giant circle, and it's the insurance companies are milking the pharmaceutical companies are milking the doctors and the hospitals, and then the food companies are involved, and it's like none of them have our best interest at heart, and it's all about profit and all about power and control. And obviously they've yielded a lot of power based upon certain models of fear, and people are deeply controlled by that fear, and it's polarizing them and in ways. And it's just like, we live in a society that is deeply scarcity based. We live in a society that's deeply oppressed. Many times over, when somebody actually sits there and wants to tell you that the United States is the greatest country on the planet, you have to really question either their education or their sanity, as far as like, where did they derive that particular statement from? What is it that really truly would be supportive of that? And many times over, you start really looking into everything, and you realize there's literally nothing that would support nor substantiate that particular statement. And then you have to ask yourself, how is it that we are the most indoctrinated society on the planet? Other countries do not do this, by the way. How is it that we are a society of people that work themselves to death under the guise of nationalism or even patriotism? And you have to ask yourself, why is that exactly? Why is it that pharmaceutical companies have so much power to yield? Why is it the food and agriculture industries have so much power to yield, and the American people on average are the sickest on the planet? I mean, these are some very big questions to be asking, and I encourage more people to truly start asking these questions and understanding, how the body works with nutrition and the lack thereof, and how do we get to that point of being the sickest country on the planet? What can we do about our health? I mean, this is the one thing I could say is this, and I don't like to use the word crisis, but it's a national epidemic of people not wanting to have, or not being able to have, a better life and a healthier life. And you're putting your power into these politicians, into political establishments, if you would, under the guise that they're going to save you, that they care about you. They've shown time and time again that they do not. The big question is, why does the American people continue on this particular path? What can we do that would veer us off? We're already looking at a possible extinction of the human race based upon the ideals of nationalism, the ideals of wanting to kill somebody else because they don't line up with our political ideologies or even our so-called religions and everything else. This is one of the things that you really truly want to look into in society. So another idea of looking into things from that deep introspective that we all have within.